All right. Hello and welcome to the Scaling Sleep Solutions Show. I'm your host, David Odenyo, and my family's business, Scoring and Sleep Tech Solutions, has been supporting sleep practices here in the DMV area for the past 2 decades. And recently, we're on a mission to speak with leaders within the sleep medicine and sleep technology field to get their perspective on what the future of sleep technology is to help more practices to grow their practice and also ultimately to improve patient outcomes. So I have somebody here today who I'm really excited to chat with who I think will really be able to give a perspective on the history and the future of sleep technology. So Sean Gipson, it's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much. I'm excited to share with you guys. It's been a wild ride.
Awesome, awesome. And so for those who may not know about you, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I early on mistakenly got involved in sleep. It wasn't sleep yet. It was research medicine through a pool tab at the old student union at my university, and said I could make some money at nighttime. And I was like, all right, well, I'll try that out. It was a phone conversation. I'm thinking this is crazy. They're going to teach me how to do something over the phone and through some books, and then follow up if everything went well with some computer work. And this was back in the old telefactor days, where the pens and paper and all that good stuff. And so I really had no idea what I was getting into. It looked like a giant lie detector test. But all in all, I had the profound experience of working with the founding members in sleep medicine, and really have really watched the technology and medicine as a whole go from what was farce, and then it was experimental, then very well reimbursed, to now an industry that has kind of leveled out, and now we're really looking at a much more complex type medicine rather than just kind of a mainstream sleep apnea type scenario.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So you were there right around the beginning, and the from what I know, the industry it's about. We were chatting before how it's still pretty new. It's about 40 years from my knowledge. Is that about right?
That's correct, and I've been in it for. I'm now going to age myself, so I've been in it for the majority of those 40 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so I think it'll be really interesting to hear your perspective of how things have changed and um, from since then. Our friend Joe Womack put us in touch and let me know that you went to the point where you went from RPSGT to running several labs and really getting deeper and deeper into the industry. So I guess my question for you would be, what maybe is like one of the biggest changes that you've seen or most significant changes you've seen since your time in the industry?
Gosh, man, there's many, right? We started with a mechanical uh, big fuse vacuum tube technology. I
Mm.
would come home with ink all over the front of me when the patient got up, and the needles would go flying everywhere. I mean, I'm part of a dying culture now, or technology culture. We used to be able to tell what stage sleep everybody was in by the sound of the needles on the paper, and it sounds crazy and strange. And actually, as they developed into more complex technology and started putting computers into it all, even some of the first versions of the computers made the pen scratch noise as you were acquiring your study. But yeah, so I mean, we went from mechanical into more of a digital format. The solutions have gone from kind of a mainstream to quite an array. And then over the years, as the research has come through and we're learning more about sleep in general, there's so many sleep disorders out there now, and how they're tying to major life, uh, uh, gosh, how do I say this? Major life medical outcomes with things like cancer and sleep deprivation and healing, and what is sleep really doing for our bodies. We're still learning all that stuff today, but now looking back, I I thought that we were really smart and way advanced, but now looking at it now, the techs that are out there today are treating some really complex stuff that, to be quite honest, 20 years ago we wouldn't have known what to do. I mean, that was a physician's job at that point.
Mm, yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. I only ever see the pictures. Every now and then I see pictures of the old labs with the sheets of paper and everything, and I'm like, it's hard for me to imagine that that's how things were at some point. But
Yeah.
that's really interesting to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think our biggest struggle back in those days was when your pen would get blocked, with the ink would dry in the pen. You had these little bulbs that you would pump until it blew the ink out, and then on your paper it'd go. Psh.
Mm,
Uh, I mean, it was a mess. But that really things like belts, we used to blow up the belts. When we really first started, there weren't cup electrodes; they were subdermal insertions. So imagine, hey, come on in. We're going to do the sleep study. Just hold on while I put this long EMG needle in your scalp. And they look at you like you're crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean those are the days. And we used to sleep, or we used to sleep. We used to sit right not far from the sleeping patient as well, because you couldn't, the cables for the equipment weren't advanced enough to be able to prolong that signal into another room.
Mm, wow. Wow. Yeah, that's wild. And so you mentioned it earlier, even so that's kind of the diagnosis side, but on the prescription side, I've heard of there's one patient I spoke with who said he was diagnosed with sleep apnea early when it was really early in sleep medicine.
Mhm.
One solution, and you could tell us more about others. One solution he said that they tried with him is they put some sort of an alarm on him, and whenever he turned onto his back, it would go off and wake him up so that he turns back onto his side. So
Yeah,
you
I mean,
saw so.
absolutely. I mean, we would. I would teach people to buy T-shirts and take the pocket off the T-shirt
Mm,
and move it to the middle, put a racquetball in it, and sew the pocket closed, wear it backwards, and that way they would roll over and keep you from having to buy the screeching machine. I mean, it's just like a bedwetting machine, or one of the machines that, like, if you go in a hospital and somebody's not supposed to get out of bed, and they will alarm if they get out of the bed. Same type scenario. I mean, we dealt with CPAP machines that were, you would roll them in to the end of the bed, and it sounded almost like a vacuum cleaner whenever you turned them on. It was loud. And I'm thinking, these guys are never going to sleep with all this stuff. But it literally was the size of like an old oxygen concentrator.
mm,
And then
mm,
the masks used to go over your entire face. I mean, that's how we started. So
mm,
yeah, we've come a long ways. I mean, masks have come a long ways. The CPAP machines have come a long way. I mean, there was only one provider, when I was there, and then it that moved into several different providers. But the treatment side of things and the complexity. Who would have ever thought that you would have nocturnal seizures, and that was the only thing that you would ever have to deal with? I think the thing that really grew my company whenever I was younger was the fact that we did all of those. We would diagnose all the crazy parasomnias, some of the things that you only saw like in research films, or these people that would get up and take off out of bed and they were sound asleep, and they yank back with all the electrodes, and the only thing the tech would go is, oh man. I got to hook those guys all up again, and just there's so much. I mean, just so much, and all the different leads and everything. I mean, we have come such a long ways in a very short period of time. But now the diagnosis that we're able to make and the complexity of treating like a complex sleep apnea or central sleep apnea type scenario. Um, I mean, our way to get through that before was just to bulldoze in with a whole bunch of air. And as I used to tell people, it's like get on the freeway, get, get your car up to about 85, roll the window down, stick your head out. That's what it's going to feel like. And honestly, the text would be like, "Why are these guys complaining about all this stuff?" And so it actually became part of my training that we would make a tech come in and sleep on CPAP at 16, and it gave them a different perspective of what they were having to start somebody out with, especially your claustrophobic people and just all the different scenarios that we had to deal with. You know, So that the subsection that was the adults, and then the pediatrics. Everybody was just petrified of pediatrics. I worked with a few of the children's hospitals in the United States, and I would score sleep studies, for Dr. Ferber way up at Boston Children's right here, from Dallas, Texas, and Dallas Children's, all these different, crazy trying to think, how am I going to hook up this infant to really try to figure out, what's going on with them. And those were truly the ones. I mean, you had to be stealth. I mean, you really had to figure out, how to keep the wires out of the way, how they're not going to pull them off. Technology today doesn't require all that stuff, and it's just it's pretty amazing seeing medicine, kind of from a retrospect looking back.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not gonna lie. I still have an old grass machine that's in the storage unit. I just can't get rid of it.
The
I'm sure
grass cutter.
somebody. Yeah, I mean it weighs a ton. It looks like some Frankenstein machine, but um, every time I pull it out, it just when I sit there and look at it all, I'm thinking that's crazy that I learned how to do all this stuff. And honestly, today I think it's a little bit I would use that machine to train techs that had no clue um, what sleep medicine was or whatever, and they're just trying to get into the industry. And so at that point, it was all on the job, you know. And so you would shadow somebody for months. But in those old days, I mean, you would adjust your fine gain, you would adjust everything. So you completely understood how amplifiers worked because you were forced to. I
Mhm.
mean, you turn the wrong knob and all of a sudden you're flatline on your paper, and all the while, the doctor the next day you can see what is he doing. You're
Yeah,
marking all this stuff on your paper, but yeah, I mean it's pretty cool looking at things today.
yeah. You know, it's given me a perspective. I think sometimes I could even take for granted the technology as it is today. And and sometimes feel like, how could we, because how patients complain even still about the PSG. I'm like, how could we create a technology that could make this even so much more comfortable? But now knowing that you had to stick a needle inside somebody's scalp gives a whole different perspective of how far the technology has come.
Yeah, hold
And
still, we're gonna go to sleep.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a lot.
It
Imagine being
sounds
the
like,
patient on the other side.
yeah. It sounds like what patients typically expect when they come in, like to be part of some scientific experiment or something like that.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's daunting. And look, they're going back and looking it up. Doctor Google, what's a sleep apnea,
Mm,
and they see the most horrific, pictures or whatever. I always tell everybody, from the media perspective, you always get somebody from Texas, and it's some guy that sounds, like he's coming from some backwoods place and just as awkward as can be. And it, I mean, I see it all just the same.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I know you kind of started talking about like how you ended up starting your business. So I'm curious to hear that. But the as far as the CPAP, you mentioned it was like a vacuum. And am I right in saying that the original design for the CPAP was a vacuum that was just reversed?
Yeah, so I actually at that point worked at when I came back to Texas and understood all the technology. There was only two big providers in all of the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. One of them was over in a hospital; it's not even there anymore, called All Saints, and then there was their competition in Dallas, and it was opposing schools per se, but yeah, they. I remember when they got their CPAP, and I was like, wow. I mean, it truly looked like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. Uh, some heating thing. I mean, it had hoses everywhere. It was big. I mean, I'm thinking, how in the world? He turns it on. He's like, check this out. I'm like, how are they going to sleep with the noise? I mean, it was, and then you would just muffle it with like blankets or whatever. I mean, they had stuff stuffed in there anyways, like foam and stuff. But I, I mean, I laugh even to today, looking just even at the CPAP machines now. You can slip them in your shirt pocket and stuff. And we used to walk in the room, with a it's not about a two or three shoebox size box.
Mhm.
And it was a big, ugly square box. And they're like, I got to have that. And I'm like, yeah, we'll make some room on your, on your nightstand. And yeah, that's it. And it had a big filter on it. I mean, it was not anything that anybody was really looking forward to, but really early on in the days, and I think you still do it today when you get somebody that's had really whatever the sleep disorder was, and literally, when you're treating it, if you have the ability and the blessing from the payers that you're able to treat it, and you see these people wake up and it's like night and day, seeing the difference in the person, and they're like, they've been up for like 10 minutes and they're like, I can feel it. And I'm thinking, that's placebo. It's got to be placebo. But then you see them and they're just bouncing around, and their partner comes in and their partner's like, what is going on with you? It's just, I look at it just kind of like blood pressure, as your sleep debt drives, you don't really feel that, right? And then we go and fixed it, and literally you get that 3-day turnaround, but you are taking big chunks out. And so, working in an industry where you can have a turnaround that's that fast, it's amazing. I mean, we can't do that with most anything in medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very, very satisfying when you hear, which I've on occasion heard, like that this is the best night of sleep I've had in decades. Like that is a really satisfying part of the job. And does give perspective because like you're saying, the original one was so bulky, loud, all of that, but still it was able to help so many people improve their quality of life and not have to get the hole in their
Right.
airway, the tracheotomy, and
I
and
mean,
just have a
that
better
was
life.
the other answer. They were getting a trach.
Mm.
Sorry, it's not going to work for you. We're going to schedule you for surgery.
Yeah,
Imagine that. I mean, gosh, it's just barbaric, when you think about it. But I guess if you watch the way that medicine has evolved with pretty much any technology, it starts at a very basic, ugly factor that slowly improves over time. So
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's even as I feel like there's so many new technologies outside of the CPAP, I feel like that gives more of us perspective to really appreciate the CPAP for what it's done and what it's still doing.
right, yeah. So look, man, the that was the only answer, right?
Mm.
And as the diagnosis grew and things really just started to grow, and we learned a little bit more. I'm looking at like present day things, like the IH2 solutions, things in that scenario where in my world as a sleep tech, somebody would say dentist, and I'd be like, no, no, no. Or they'd say ENT, I'd be like, ooh, be careful, Uh, these guys, that this group has gotten smart enough to actually get everybody to come together in a solutions pod type scenario. And it reminds me of the old fish tank days when uh, people would get together and just throw ideas around and come up, after a whole weekend has gone by, and here's the golden egg. This is how we're going to treat this. The ICE 2 has the capability of letting the patient drive that, whereas like in our day, most of the people were pulmonologists, and CPAP was the answer. And so you would put them on CPAP and they'd be like, wow, this is not pleasant. And you're like, nope, it's not, but it's going to keep you alive, and your quality of life is going to be better, except for when you're trying to put that thing on. No. But I mean, and some of them were just like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care. I'm not going to do it. And we have that every day. It happens today. We have those answers now without going, all right, well, sorry. I tried to help you. Let me send you back over. I got another buddy that does some sleep stuff. Maybe that can help you. We're gonna rip some teeth out of your mouth, or we're gonna give you this, mandibular advancement device, or we're gonna. There's been all kinds of things. We're gonna put pillars in your neck and surgically implant these things, and it's gonna hold your airway open. And I mean, there's just lots of different things that we've been kind of in and out of, but never ever have we ever pulled a group together to where all those solutions are in one small treatment area. And it's a perfect storm in the sense that you have the ability to finally be treated and you're not going to get bounced all over the place. I would get it as a patient that they're sleep deprived, this thing's not working for them. They just get irritated with it, and they're like, there is no help. There's no help for me. I'm not going to wear all that stuff again. I'm not going through another one of those studies. I'm just not going to do it. So, I always laugh, and you go out and you're like, see the neighborhood garage sales, and you start meandering through things, and somebody throws their CPAP machine is up there. And I'm like, you can't sell that. Let me just tell you, you can't sell that. But I love that you have that. And that thing's actually archaic. But no, I mean, this group has the answers, be it dental, be it ENT, be it, CPAP. There's sleep specialists surrounded all around it. It is accessible from all the doctors that are involved, so they can see everything that's going on within their platform. It is just, why is it taking us that long to get here? And we've always talked about it. The people in sleep that have been around for a long time, we've always talked, why can't we do this? But it was like putting the red against the blue, or it was just, they were opposing forces, and that just wasn't going to happen. So,
Yeah.
but here we are.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's how we connected is through the IH2 solutions model. I'm
Yeah.
curious, just whatever you're able to share, I'm curious what your or what role you're kind of playing together with them um to help more patients find the right solution for them.
Sure. So, I'm on the how do I s I'm in the pool where all the doctors come in to say, "We've got patients that have problems. What do we do?" And so I'm the side of the whole process where we're going, "Okay, this is, you know, we've got the specialists, these sleep specialists out here, and here's the mechanism." And it's a gateway essentially to allow them to get in, but somebody has to be able to catch all the referral information. Most of the times it's coming from like a primary care or somebody else, that is not completely educated fully on, all the sleep disorder issues that are out there. It's just my group's job to gather that information, package it all up, give it to the specialist, let the specialist do their job, and then open, the doors to uh, the solutions and everything else without having to be bounced and taken, 6 months or 3 months every time waiting, for somebody to say, yeah, it's okay to do that. Or I got to get on the waiting list because they've got a 3 month, uh, waiting list to even making that initial visit to somebody's office. You don't have to do that with this. And so it gets a solution to you quickly. You make the decision, and you go home sleeping better.
Yeah,
It's sounds so simple, and it is in that sense, but it's been so hard to get to that point, and look, I mean, the challenge now, we had the big CPAP crash, where nobody could get CPAP machines, and for the longest time, I was like, what do we do? We got to stop testing these people. We're liable. They're sitting there. I know they have sleep apnea, and I have nothing to put them on. I'm thinking that, what do we do? The big technology change, reimbursement came down, and people just started jumping out. Consolidation, and now we're back to, you know the big number of there's not a big number of places anymore, and you do have to go, and there will, be waiting lists at some of these sleep labs that are out there. And I think the key is really just finding a truly board certified sleep specialist that's going to be able to talk to you about everything, not just it's sleep apnea and this is how we treat it and that's your answer.
yeah, yeah. It's a unique, and like you said with IH2, when I heard of it, it just seemed to click. Like it just seemed to make sense, the approach that they're taking.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's exciting. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they're launching today in Dallas, right?
See what it say? They sure are. Today's the
Yeah.
day.
All
Yeah.
right, we'll have to connect with Joe and see how it goes. Yeah,
But I
congrats.
think I can hear him. I mean, it's been a long time coming for those guys. They put it together pretty swiftly. I mean, you kind of watch the tail end of all that stuff. Uh, they got a lot of smart guys in a very small space, and it was kind of magical to watch these guys just ping off of each other. I was just kind of sitting back, just watching. It's pretty cool. And you've been privy to some of the meetings in there and just watching these guys. I mean, there's good business guys. There's guys that have been in the whole mouthpiece experimental side of some of the technology with evolution, and the dental side and the ENT side, and just general. It was cool kind of watching all that stuff come together. And yeah, today's their day. It's the birthday, so it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's fitting that we're having this conversation today.
It actually is. Where's Joe?
He's here in spirit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. But so, okay, now this question is kind of one I was also excited to ask you about for kind of selfish reasons, I'll be honest. So you had mentioned to me that you ran at some point, I think it was a few dozen labs that you were running, right?
58. Yeah.
58 labs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Chaos.
very curious. So our family's business, we managed a little less than a dozen. I think it's maybe about 8 labs we're managing right now. And then some of the doctors we work with also want to go multi-lab. We have a few who have multiple labs, but how did you go from RPSGT to managing 58 labs? What was that process?
It was being blessed. I mean, honest to God. No, much of my career has been, I probably shouldn't say this because it really takes away. I've been in the right place at the right time. I mean, I fortunate to get into sleep early on. For whatever reason, it was a natural fit for me. I mean, I just got it. I mean, it wasn't. It didn't take me long at all to catch on, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I get that. That's sleep spindle. That's K complex. Yeah." And the guy's looking at me, going, "Okay, how long have you been looking at this?" Well, you just started showing me. He goes, "You've already picked that up. I get it. It's numbers and waves. I got it. But that happens with people in different places. Now, ask me to do, some crazy statistical math problem. Probably not going to happen. You're going to get that wonky look out on my face. But I think really just being in tune. And I think the biggest thing that people, if I could back up, and because it was growth for me too. I spent many years thinking that I was the end all know all. And it's embarrassing now to look back to see, we plateaued out and it was my fault. We did that because I thought that I had all the answers. And to be quite honest, it was all the techs that were, the techs that were working in the business. And they're like, "Hey, Sean, have you ever thought about doing this?" I'm like, "No, who are you? I got this, you keep doing your thing." And you know what? It was less than a year later when I was like, "Man, we got to try that." And embarrassing. It was a huge learning moment for me to, you're not all that you're cranked up to be, at least in your head, right? But the people that are on the surface level that are touching the patients every night, they're hearing them every night. That pulled me back. And then because sleep was growing so quickly, I got into the education side of it. I wrote a curriculum and then I started teaching it. I became an accredited educator for sleep medicine, and we moved on, and I sold my curriculum to a college, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of cool. We're breeding these sleep techs out there, and as the industry was kind of slowing down because we were captive by the solutions that we were able to provide. Um, but I think that getting back to your question, I think it took some listening. It took a lot of hard nights. I remember hiring my first tech, thinking, "What if I can't pay this guy?" When I was young, and I'm thinking, "This is crazy." It took everything that I had. I had 7 cents in my bank account after I bought the equipment, and I had to go for 2 weeks on 7 cents. It was
Wow.
many years ago, but I was just like, "Man, we got to we got to make this." But back in those days, you know, when it did pay, it was great. Um, but once you got your base and you were treating people, and that was going back to the physicians and some of the sleep specialists, and they're like, "Good job, I'm glad I'm involved." And we're like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's do education stuff for them." Docs are like, "That's fine. I'll do this piece. You do the rest." we called we called them awake groups, and we would have all these patients coming in, and most of them it was with CPAP people, problems or whatever. They bring their machine, we show them how to change filters or whatever it might be happening, but it was education. And then it was taking the education from the physician's perspective and spreading it out to the primary care guys and going, look, that looks like sleep apnea. It looks like, smells like, and because there was no real formal education early on in medical school for sleep. It was somebody once told me, and I don't know if this is true, but it was like it consisted of about 2 hours of your entire career in sleep medicine, and it was more about how the biological stages of sleep versus issues that we might have in sleep uh, in terms of disorders and stuff like that. But once that clicked and people started listening, then those docs were moving on to other docs, talking to their friends who then started getting, into at that one point, it was just one sleep board. And then the AMA started doing sleep as a subspecialty, and that's where it really took off. And that's everybody was talking. They would come to the sleep meetings. I had the pleasure of being a speaker at those. And so we would connect. There's lots of networking going on. And Doc would pop up 6 months later going, hey, I'm in Chicago. I think I'm going to start my own sleep lab. Can you help me? Sure. That was another issue that I had where I didn't know what no was. I didn't understand the answer no. And so, I'm in Dallas. I'm like, Chicago? Yeah, no problem. We'll get up there. And then I'm like, I don't know how to recruit people up there. Am I going to get logistics? I'm like hauling all my stuff up there in the car. And, but I did the same thing with California. And before I knew it, it's 58 clinics in 7 states.
Mm.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I took a lot from that, like listening, taking feedback, and saying, not knowing how to say no. That's
Yeah.
been,
I mean, I would tell in any business, I mean, you got to listen three more times and you open your mouth because they're going to tell you the answers before you get to the questions. And so when you do get to the questions, if you listen, you probably already know that answer. At least you know what the experience is of somebody else's. And that's growth, right? That allows us to, okay, I know somebody that made that mistake. Let's not do that. Let's go here, and it kind of gets you past that. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take that as a lesson for sure. Thanks for sharing. And
sure.
so I know we're coming to the end. So my, I guess, final question to you would be kind of looking at the future of sleep technology. What is kind of we heard a lot about the past and how it's developed. What do you see kind of on like a high level, the the future trends of sleep apnea and treating sleep apnea, diagnosing sleep apnea? What's your perspective?
Sure. So, I mean, the hubbub in the world today is predictive analysis, and there's a lot of that going on in medicine. AI technology that allows us to, kind of put in the pinpoint factors of if it smells like this, it looks like that, and we're coming to a place in healthcare as a whole, not just in sleep, that those parameters are being put into place. If it's not somebody close to you and there's somebody next door that's doing it, and it's going to come out, and so I think we're going to see huge technological advances. You don't really have to do a whole bunch in the lab anymore, and I think the advance in the technology is going to allow us to really do even more in a comfortable home setting. I used to just fight, kick, and scream to not do home studies, so forth and so on. But that's not a choice, That's we have to go there. And to be quite honest, the healthcare industry doesn't have big spaces for sleep labs, anyways. So technology is going to be one of those. I would say probably the most prolific thing, and I've had hundreds of people in as sleep techs hey, so in my career, I have moved into hospital administration and doing some other things outside of sleep. I still have sleep, but it's coordinated in with, as an outpatient factor of some of these other things that I'm doing. But a lot of sleep techs, two of which I'm very proud of breeding, my brother and my sister.
Mm,
They watched me. I was the middle sibling, and in the three of us, and they watched me just catapult off into craziness. And my sister's like on vacation. She came down to hang out with me, and I'm like, I was doing call EEG, and she was like, "Hey, that's kind of cool. I love that." And I'm like, "You ought to get into sleep. It's you just go to sleep lab and you do a modified EEG, and you have all these other things." She's like, "Tell me more about that." And I'm like, next thing you know, I've got, the atlas out, and I'm like spreading out all these papers, and this is this. And she caught on. As soon as she started doing it, my brother was like, "Hey, why aren't you teaching me how to do that?" So, but, I would say the techs, they had that bell curve thing happen as well. And so all the a lot of the in labs, there's a lot of competition out there. And I was saying, as I was saying earlier, used to go down the street and there'd be a 7-Eleven in the sleep lab, 7-Eleven in the sleep lab, and they were everywhere. And so there was a large amount of consolidation. And so the need for those sleep techs reduced, in the sense, more so, I would say, in the private industry versus the medical industry. And so the techs that are out there now know so much more and have to know so much more, because we are in some very complex. I mean, the patients that we're seeing in the labs now are multi morbidity issues. I mean, it could be seizures and sleep apnea and narcolepsy and parasomnias.
mm,
And I mean, how do you look at all that in one night? When you're running your study and this guy's trying to jump out of bed, and is he jumping out of bed, or are those seizures? No, those are seizures. Let me go make sure he's okay. Let me get all the electrodes back on. He's having sleep apnea now. He's in REM sleep. Oh, he's having sleep apnea. And what is that? He's, I don't know, talking in sleep. He's running. He's riding a bike. I've seen it all. But uh, those are the people that you guys are seeing now. Before, those folks were just not even. It was just like a, a patient that wouldn't even go to the doctor because they just thought they were totally crazy. I mean, they didn't really understand what everything was. All these different things are happening. So you get this yarn ball of messed up biological systems that are not functioning well together, and you got to figure it out. It's it's like putting a puzzle together. You got to take it apart first to figure out where all the broken pieces are, and then with your sleep doc, uh, and God knows however many other physicians, depending on what we're dealing with, and neurologists and whatever else, put it all back together one by one, and then miracle, in a miracle, you get this guy that has a great night's sleep, and he goes, I can't believe this is happening, when before he couldn't really even talk to you. And that's the type of medicine that we're dealing with now, versus back in the day, you'd have somebody that had sleep apnea so bad and they were so sleep deprived, they, as you were trying to hook them up, they're falling asleep or whatever. But I mean, that was a bad patient. Now it's just so much different. Our people are much more sick, much more involved with many more systems that we're dealing with. And so I got to give kudos, to the registered sleep techs out there that are hung in there, and they're working in these complex labs dealing with these complex disorders, and uh, it's not easy. But by gosh, you're giving somebody their life back, and that's what's important for us, and the end all, being able to see, people. I still have friends and folks from many years ago that I've treated in one extremity or the other, that come back and like, "Oh, I'm still on that CPAP machine. I can't sleep without it." It's like, a buddy of mine calls it his girlfriend. My wife doesn't mind. I got to put my girlfriend, and I'm like, no, she doesn't mind because she's not going to sleep if you don't have that thing on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I felt like a marriage counselor for, some of the times when people come in and go, "Look, if you can't get this fixed, we're done." And I'm like, don't put that pressure on me. You need a marriage counselor and you need some church, man. I
Not
can't
a
help
sleep tech. A sleep tech, you end up being a counselor, coach,
you.
therapist.
You get it all. You get it all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, it is it's very good to hear your perspective, like somebody who's been in the industry for so long. And I feel like something unique about you is that typically when you think of someone who's been in an industry for a long time, you think of someone who's like stuck in their ways. This is how we did it back then. This is how we're gonna do it. This is how it's gonna keep being. But from speaking with you, I could tell that you definitely, like you said, listen and have evolved with the technology. And now it's really exciting stuff that you're a part of with IH2 and everything. So really, really a rich conversation and maybe I know we got to end, but maybe in the future we'll do another one to hear more about your experiences throughout the being part of the AASM and all of that in the future.
You bet. I'm absolutely happy to do so. David, I appreciate you throwing me out here. I would love for the sleep tech world to know that, it is absolutely important with, the things that they're doing. Uh, because I can't do, and some of the other things that we do, we can't do spine surgery on somebody that has severe sleep apnea. I mean, it's a mortality risk. So, I mean, I love it when these guys come, in preoperatively with a CPAP machine and they're like, "Oh, you know what this is?" I'm like, "I do know what that is. That's going to be on you when you get out of surgery. I got you." So it's an important job that's out there and it's not obsolete. I hear all these naysayers that are out there. It is not obsolete by any means. I just think that your job is more important now. And the importance of what you're doing is putting puzzle pieces together that most people, even in the age of our general age of our physicians that are out there, still have probably less knowledge than most of the techs that are out there that had to study up on all this stuff in order for them to pass their tests. It's pretty cool to be able to have that scenario. And don't forget, man, your credential is one of the only international credentials that's out there. That's pretty amazing stuff. That's not, nurses don't have that. That's not something that is just a fly by night kind of thing. That's special.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. This conversation has given me definitely a heightened awareness of the importance of the role. And like you said, because sometimes I'll think maybe sleep tech, it won't exist. I'd have those conversations with other sleep techs, but to see maybe it's not going to be the way that we do it or did it, but it's still going to be a vital role. So I think a lot of sleep techs who hear this are going to be able to take heart from that more positive, hopeful message. But
Excellent.
yeah, before we hop off, do you have any other words, Sean, or anything else you wanted to share?
Nope. I think I just keep doing what you're doing. That industry got me to where I'm at today, and people laugh at me. I have doctors, surgeons all the time. How'd you get here? Well, I started at the job pull tab, and I started my first sleep company. I had no idea what I was doing, but it's relevant, and it has been very well worth the while. And really, I'm still doing it today, and I'm 35 years, 37 years into this now. So
Hmm. Well, awesome. Awesome conversation, Sean. And if anybody wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
I think you can look me up. I'm most active on LinkedIn. Um, I do a lot of different stuff on LinkedIn out there. Look up IH2, gander through there, then call you. David, no, I mean you're connecting dots all over the place. I think that's very important. I certainly appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks. Thanks. Well, yeah, I'll link your LinkedIn and I'll put one of the IH2 links down there too. And Sean, great conversation. Thanks for hopping on. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. And we'll see you next time on Scaling Sleep Solutions Show.
Thank you.